24-25 council cycle of the Charity Trustees SubCommittee. I'm Richard Williams, Member of Stannington Ward and Chair of this committee. Thank you for attending, and thank you for those on the webcast for being involved. The meeting today is open to the public. However, Appendices 1 and 2 to the report are item 10 on the agenda, and Appendices C and I to the report at item 11 on the agenda are not available to the public or press because they contain exempt information relating to financial and business affairs. If members wish to discuss the information in these appendices, we will need to ask the members of the public and press to kindly leave from that part of the meeting, and we will pause the webcast. We have 6 public questions from 2 members of the public and no petitions. Please could I ask or request that mobile telephones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. I'm advised there is no fire test planned this afternoon. If there is an emergency evacuation, please take instruction from the Town Hall staff. The assembly point is Tudor Square. For the benefit of the webcast, please could each member of this subcommittee introduce themselves. I'll start with Mike.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Chaplin. I'm a councillor for Southey Ward.
Fran Belbin, councillor for Firth Park Ward and deputy chair of the committee.
Good afternoon, I'm Christine Gilligan-Kubo. I'm a member for Hillsborough Ward and I'm Green Party spokesperson for this committee.
Good afternoon, my name is Councillor Curtis Crossland. I am a councillor for Bayton Ward and chair of the Communities, Parks and Leisure Committee.
Thank you, and could I ask officers to introduce themselves when they speak, please? Thank you. Item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
There's no apologies, Chair.
Thank you. Item 2 is exclusion of the press and public. I've already described that might happen. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Do any members wish to declare any interest of any of the items on the agenda, and could they also please state whether they are pecuniary or personal interests? Silence reigns. Thank you very much. Item 4 is minutes of the previous meetings. We have 2 to consider, the 4th and the 21st of March. If we start with the 4th of March, I'll read out the page number, and if any of you want to jump in, please just signal. So we have page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15, page 16, page 17, page 18, and page 19. Okay, so those minutes are approved. Thank you. Yep. All right. Okay. I feel a bit like a bingo caller actually on this. And then the minutes of the 21st of March in the agenda package, page 21, page 22, page 23, and the minutes as a whole. No, did you want to say something? Oh, Fran's, yes, it's only Fran and myself, so. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 5 is public questions and petitions. We have 2 questions. I would ask Mr. Johnson to come forward and ask his questions. And before you start, Mr. Johnson, firstly, welcome. And as I know you're aware, but others aren't, because your questions failed to meet the deadline, I'll say, yeah, I'm more than happy to have the questions. I think it's important they're in the public record, but I will be providing written answers in due course.
Will that be only written answers? You're not going to make some attempt here and now to? Okay. Nevertheless, I'll thank you for allowing a late admission. It was several hours late, and I apologise for that. And thank you all for this opportunity to play my small part in local democracy. So, there are 5 questions, but they're quite short. The first 3 are in one section, which is headed, regarding the restoration of the next section of the nurseries back to parkland. Number 1, Is the Charity Subcommittee aware that Friends of Graves Park are still waiting for permission to restore the next section of the Norton Nurseries site back to Parkland? This, of course, is a long-running saw. I'm hoping there will be a satisfactory answer. Number 2, has the Charity Subcommittee noted that, as with the previous 2 restorations of parts of the site to Parkland, the new restoration will be fenced off with supervised access to volunteers until the site is fully restored and safely opened to the public? An eminently reasonable position to take, I think. 3, will the Charity Subcommittee please, as a matter of urgency, agree to the land for the next section of Chantreyland Meadow and Arboretum, as identified in the questions on the 21st of January last year, being released to the Friends of Graves Park for restoration with immediate effect, so that it can be fenced off whilst this is restored back to Parkland. And then, once restoration is complete, reopened to the public. Uncontentious, I would have thought. The other 2 questions refer to a wider discharge by the Council of its charity's responsibilities, something I've been concerned about for some time. Does the Chair agree with me that in order to properly discharge its responsibilities and in accordance with the principles of good governance, the Charity Sub should include representation of relevant parties beyond this very limited number of solely elected members? Now, clearly, I'm not criticising any elected members in saying this. I'm merely saying that the voices should come from other sources as well as from yourselves. This matter has been the subject of a previous public question by a member of the public, not me. An assurance was then given that action would be considered. Has that consideration taken place? And if so, what was the outcome? And finally, question 5. Would the Chair agree with me with the point I made to Councillor Hunt in a private meeting, possibly a year ago now, that if the Council's protestations that they aspire to become a listening, responsive and open organisation are to carry any credibility, this glaring flaw, i.e. the poor representation referred to in the previous question, in Council practice with regard to management of charitable parks should be remedied without further delay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I will look forward to getting you some written answers in the very near future.
Because I've been present, presumably my questions will go into the minutes. Yes? As will your answers when they are produced.
Yeah, my intention of letting you ask them whether they went into the public domain through the minutes. Our second question is from Caroline Dewar. If you'd like to come forward, please.
Good afternoon, Charity Subcommittee. These are questions on behalf of the Friends of Graves Park, for whom I am the chair. The Friends of Graves Park have been informed by Graves Park Parks manager about the plans to lease the cricket hut at the south side of the park for 5 years to a local group who want to improve changing facilities, etc. We have since read the report and the amended report for the agenda item. We now realise that it includes the whole of the cricket pitch. Naturally, we fully support the increased access, use and maintenance of a facility. The club concerned seems to be doing an excellent job, and we can fully understand their desire to have reasonable changing facilities and need for a longer licence to achieve this. Indeed, we are willing to support them in any fundraising or applications for funding in the future. The report indicates that there has been appropriate consultation, but it would seem that this has only been within the council, as we were informed once the proposal was being submitted. We were unaware that the whole of the pitch outfield was included. After making inquiries and listening to various people, including some of the group themselves, we have concerns about this suggested lease and arrangement for the following reasons. To put in historical context, the land was first offered as a cricket pitch in the 19th century, and from then Norton Woodseats Cricket Club, or the local community, had the right to play there, so this predates Graves Park. The council is incorrect in item 431. The conveyance for this land dates from 1936, when J.G. Graves bought this land to be added to his previous acquisitions of 1925 and 1931. The cricket hut, or shed, was put up by Norton Woodseats Cricket Club and, to our knowledge, does not belong to the Graves Park Trust. Norton Woodseats Cricket Club moved to Matthews Lane so that they could have a better pitch, proper cricket pitch, and get funding for a proper pavilion, which is now in place. One of the problems of trying to improve their pitch in Graves Park is that it would involve serious intervention, which would damage or destroy what is a significant historical heritage site. This has always prevented such improvement in the past. The current group informed us that they do not want a lease, just a licence to use the hut and improve it. All the above notwithstanding, the Friends of Graves Park are not happy about yet more leases being given to people to have control over land within Graves Park when the land is not to be disposed of according to the covenants. This is especially true of designated parkland, for which the clause 435, where the extent of the disposal is in proportion to the overall size of trust, so small that it will have no impact on the charity's ability to further its objects, does not apply to designated parkland, as far as we understand from previous discussions with the Charity Commission. Bearing all the above in mind, we respectfully ask the following question. Will the Charity Subcommittee, as trustee of the Graves Park Trust, please postpone this decision and arrange a discussion between Sheffield City Council, the Friends of Graves Park and the cricket group, so that information can be shared and the situation regarding the hut can be addressed in a way that benefits all those involved, while at the same time protecting the park's covenants and heritage.
Thank you very much for your question. In responding, what I would say is that I will be writing to you regarding your 6 note points in the preamble to the question. In terms of the question specifically, personally, I am minded to postpone, but I need my colleagues to agree to that, if you're in agreement. Yeah. Okay, and what we'd like to do is postpone so that it comes back at the meeting in September. In the meantime, we will arrange a meeting with yourselves and the cricket club. Agreed? Thank you. And when we reach the point, I will confirm that again when we reach it in the agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. We didn't have, in item 6, members' questions, none were received. Item 7, work programme. Could I ask Rachel to introduce herself and present this item?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rachel Appleyard, Principal Democratic Services Officer. So the work programme sets out all known substantive agenda items for the committee. In the pack, beginning on page 28, you'll see each meeting of the committee and the proposed items for those meetings. Any changes since the last meeting are outlined on page 27 as well. And if you've got any questions on specific items, I'll hand over to officers to answer those. Thank you.
Are there any questions about the full provisional work programme? No? Okay, thank you very much. Item 8, this is an update on the Rose Garden Cafe, and we have 2 people presenting this, Rebecca Nixon and Gertie Whitfield, who is from the Friends of Graves Park. Thank you very much.
Okay, hello everyone. So yeah, Gertie and I will be here today. My name is Rebecca Nixon. I'm a project manager working for Sheffield City Council. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, and I'm Gertie Whitfield from Friends of Graves Park, a trustee, and I'm a member of the partnership.
So this is the I think third progress update we've given to the Charity Trustee SubCommittee, and this is from March until kind of last week in terms of the progress made by the partnership. Just as a reminder, the Rose Garden Cafe partnership is made up of 3 partners, so Friends of Groves Park, Sheffield City Council, and then Save the Rose Garden Cafe campaign. You all set out the following recommendations that were approved in October last year. So the recommendations were to establish the Rose Garden Cafe partnership, undertake and deliver a framework for a proportionate public consultation, establish funding sources, and agree a strategy for public communication. So those will be the updates that we'll be giving. Just firstly to start with, in terms of establishing the partnership, we've been continuing to meet fortnightly to progress things at speed. Chris Hallam is our independent chair, and he's been chairing meetings since the beginning of March, and we've now completed and agreed our terms of reference, which includes the partnership's vision statement, which just sets out what we want to achieve and kind of why we're doing this. So we didn't have that last time. And now I'm going to hand over to Gertie, who's going to talk you through the public consultation.
Yeah, I'm only, because you've got the report, I'm only going to give you the kind of highlights and perhaps an insight into the process, because I think that's one of the exciting things about what we're doing. And I think working together enables us to do better, more effective work than us each working independently. And generally, what we do with things, and this is indeed what happened with the consultation, 1 or 2 members come up with something that might be appropriate, then we all talk about it, work on it, and it can be across email or in the meetings. With the consultation, we were very concerned about accessibility and language. So we did spend a lot of time trying to make that both clear and simple. And we also produced the consultation document in 2 forms, because we had an online version and with a QR code, and we also had a paper version. And that wasn't always easy to achieve. We put them in the paper ones in the cafe, the animal farm, libraries. I think there might even been a chip shop somewhere along the line. We also held 3 events where we turned up in the park to get people to either fill it in online or on paper. And that was something we all shared the staffing of during the day. We also enlisted the help of Newfield School Cartoon Club, because what this enabled us to do was to say to them, what questions do you think are important? And they came up with their own questions regarding that. And then these were cartooned onto whiteboards on the corridor into the cafe as it stands at the moment. And every day the people would write their answers, and the cafe staff would take a photograph, send it to me, and I would collate it for us so that we knew what was going on there. The results, and I think we were quite proud of the fact that somebody in our partnership came up with a brilliant infographic. I didn't even know what an infographic was prior to that. And we had 1,557 responses. And I think the fact that 41 out of 45 of the Sheffield postcodes show how important Graves Park and the cafe are to the people of Sheffield, and further afield as well, because we had Nottingham and Derbyshire and other places. Over 50% of those people visit the park at least once a week. 25% were coming daily or several times in 1 week. They were coming, and this is in the right order, so they were coming either with family, to meet friends, or alone, although often with a dog. And the cafe, and that's like another reason why this partnership is so important, was the second most important reason for coming to the park at all. And another reason why this project is so important is that heritage and identity was our top response. That was followed by making it an adaptable community space, and also that on the third was access and sustainability. They also, the facilities they were asking, so the things kind of tied together really, was for community groups, indoor play for young children, and refurbished toilets. And I think we as a partnership should be extremely proud of both our process, which is developing all the time, and those outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Gertie. So what's next for those consultation results is that we met as a partnership and we developed a brief for the restoration and refurbishment. So that included all the results from the consultation and those top 4 asks. It included the operator, so what they would like, and also obviously the partnership as well. And what we've done is created that into one co-created brief document, which will then go to the design team once appointed, so the architect, the engineer, etc. So yeah, I think we're really pleased with how that went. And I think, yeah, from where we were as establishing a partnership to actually managing to deliver a really far-reaching consultation that wouldn't have been as good if we'd done it separately, I think, yeah, I feel really proud of it as well. So the other things that have been running in parallel, we're still looking at establishing the funding sources. So David, who sat over there, has been doing his fundraising walks. We've been developing a statement of financial standing to really understand how much money we have, where it's coming from, what we're going to spend it on. The Essential Compliance and Maintenance Fund is still paying towards those structural safety works, and soon we'll have an understanding of what it will take to repair that front wall in particular. We've also looked into available Section 106 funding, and the next steps in terms of understanding what the initial cost plan for that restoration refurbishment will come through, I think, in a couple of weeks. So we've got a cost manager looking at that information now, so we'll have at least the initial cost to look at. Alongside that, we've obviously appointed a structural engineer back in March. She's undertaken detailed design, so we now understand the exact cause of why that front wall is leaning. So we had some further ground investigations undertaken, and we know it's just a foundation issue. It's not actually to do with the roof structure. So what that means is really good news for the partnership, that we can actually remove the internal scaffolding. So that's our number one priority at the moment, is working closely with the tenant to remove the scaffolding and get the internal seating open, which means we can then focus on fundraising and getting information to external funders. And then the only final thing I will say is we have a Have Your Say site now, so a partnership Have Your Say site where we try and collate all of our information. So we've got one source of information where people can go to. But yeah, that's where we're at. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you for your report and the commentary. Sounds very, very optimistic and positive, so thank you. Questions, please. Fran.
Yes, excuse me, I just wanted to say first of all that it was a real pleasure to attend one of the events recently and meet Chris Hallam, the chair of the partnership, and other members of the partnership, and see what a fantastically positive attitude everybody has towards working in the partnership. And I know it was suggested there that that's a real model for how we can work around similar issues in the future, and it was really great to see that. I wonder, there's clearly been an awful lot of progress made. It's fantastic to see these results from the survey and really good numbers of people responding, etc., and the progress that's been made on the structural survey. I just wondered if the partnership has yet considered potential funders and is looking at the funding side of it. I presume this is in hand as well, but what kind of progress has been made towards potentially identifying funders for the work?
Shall I respond?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think early on we looked at a list of funders, which was being developed by Caroline actually, and yeah, we've got a list of funders. I think Caroline, you've been updating it as well, haven't you? And then alongside that, we're trying to understand what those funders might need. So we've spoken to people who've gone to similar funders, such as the Heritage Lottery Fund, and what information they required. So it might be that there's a development appraisal pack, it might be the commercial model of the cafe. So we're starting to bring all that information together so that we have it ready.
It's been slightly delayed by the fact that those funding pots change all the time and so on. And so we've really been waiting for that cost estimate so that we know what we're looking at and have got something real to work with.
Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. I was at an event elsewhere in the city last week where I described Graves Park and the cafe as the jewel in Sheffield's crown. And I think that historical actions unfortunately led to that being tarnished a little bit. So I am genuinely impressed and happy that that seems to be improving. And not just the cafe itself, but the relationship. Because who'd have thought it, involving community in things in their local area helps move things forward. So I suppose my question is, do you think there is something here that the council as a whole can learn about community involvement?
Yes, I think it's because of the relationships that we're building. And so we can talk to each other properly. And it was very difficult to begin with. And we probably will still have lumps and bumps. But we are very clear about where we're going and very clear that we want to, wherever possible, move forward with consensus. And I think it all comes down to relationships. As far as I'm concerned, other people may have other views, but it's also been backed up. People have done what they've said they were going to do, and that makes a huge difference. And yes, this could be rolled out over other things that are going on in the park, for sure, and maybe other places.
I think I'm just going to add something on top. I think there's lessons learned. So, for example, over Christmas we had a longer period of time where we didn't have an in-face meeting, and actually those in-person meetings are what builds the trust and maintains the communication. And it's actually easy for that to start to fall away again because of the previous distrust if you don't meet regularly face-to-face. But the other thing I would say is that, yeah, I think working in partnership has way better outcomes than working separately, but it is resource heavy at the start. So for this to be an effective model that we can use across the council and across projects, then we really need to take lessons learned from what we're doing here and apply that, because it does take a lot of our time, all of our time, to build that trust and to get into a good place.
But I think that was because, as the councillor said, the trust was bad in the first place. Had the relationships been better, it might not have been so hard.
Yeah.
Friend, yes.
Perhaps I could just reflect again on that point, because this is work that we're looking at under the governance committee as well around that community engagement. And I think you're right, it is resource intensive to begin with, but I think you've got to weigh that up against the fact that if we do not build that trust, those relationships early on, then actually you spend an awful lot of time and resource mopping up messes afterwards that, you know, we could not have to do by pre-investing, if you like, in these kinds of relationship buildings. And again, I think you're absolutely right, and I think this partnership is one of the partnerships that will inform that piece of work on governance committee as well.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? No, in that case, there are some recommendations which we have to cover. These are the Charity Trustee Subcommittees asked to note the progress made towards the actions agreed in the October 2023 report. Secondly, agree to receive a further report in September 2024 on progress towards the recommendations agreed in the October 2023 report. And finally, note that further updates and decisions will be taken to the appropriate committee as required. Are we all agreed? Great, that's unanimous. And again, thank you very much for your report and the work you are doing. Item 9 is the lease of the Pavilion and Lodge at the east entrance to Endcliffe Park, Sheffield. Could I ask the officers to come forward and present the report and introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Dave Rice. I work in the Business and Partnerships section of Parks and Countryside. Okay, as you said, Chair, this is about the Hunters Bar entrance lodge at Endcliffe Park. We seek approval really to go forward with a marketing exercise, go to the market with that building as vacant possession. It'd be best for the park and the charity in that an income would be produced. It would secure the future of the historic building, and it would remove the maintenance and liability from Sheffield City Council. We see that there could be a potential food and beverage offer there that would complement the already existing cafe that's in there. The approval is just to go to the market, see who's out there, what the interest might be, and if anything suitable comes forward, then to come back, bring the proposals back to the committee.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Christine.
Thank you, Chair. I've just joined this committee, so forgive me if I'm asking a question that everybody knows the answer to. Is there a Friends of Endcliffe Park?
It's the Friends of Porter Valley that represent Endcliffe Park, Bingham Park and that area, yes.
And so are we intending to consult with them in the way the Rose Garden Cafe is moving forward at some stage once we've done the tendering?
I've met with prominent members of the Friends of Porter Valley on site already who are supportive. They just asked very reasonably to be kept in the loop along the way.
Any other questions? Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, really, in effect, this is you asking for permission to have an idea, isn't it? This isn't a developed plan at all, is it? It's just we just need permission to get some more information, don't we?
I think it's permission to see whether the idea that we've got has actually got legs, whether there's any investor out there who would be interested to come forward.
Yeah, just on that point, Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but assuming it's a successful and the market says, yes, we're interested, any proposal will have to come back to this committee or subcommittee before it can go any further forward. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Great. And there is actually quite a successful cafe in Endcliffe Park already. Are you looking to replicate that, duplicate it, or come up with something different?
I think it'd be an entirely different offer. It'd be more kind of restaurant and bistro type vibes, perhaps early evening. We know that the cafe's there during the day. We know that families and children love it. It'd be a completely different offer that we're looking for.
It would go out to the market stating that there is that existing very popular, very good cafe within the park, so we would be looking to complement it, not compete with it.
And are the managers, owners of Endcliffe Cafe aware of what you're doing? And do they have a view?
Yeah, I keep in regular contact with Ash that runs the cafe there. He knows that we're looking to do something with the building and that this is the nucleus of an idea. He's not objecting.
And putting a restaurant or whatever in there isn't in conflict with any of the charitable trust status, as far as you're aware?
What I would say is we want to go out to the market to see what's out we would need to understand what that was and then look at it and then come back for a decision. So I don't want to say a really clear yes or no, because it may depend on the offer. But when we came back and said, this is what we're proposing, this is what it looks like, it would include that, this is what it means for the charity, and this is why we think it's of benefit to the charity. So I think until we know what that offer is, we can't necessarily be really clear with, yes, it's in line with the charity objects and all that kind of stuff.
And we might need to seek further approvals from the Charity Commission depending on what comes back and level of investment, any lease or licence and so on. So we don't believe it would contravene any of the charitable objectives, but we definitely need to do a lot more investigation of that and possibly seek feedback from the Charity Commission if necessary.
Yeah.
If there's no other questions, there is a recommendation. Sorry, Curtis.
Sorry, yeah, just a final point really, that that we take this as slow and steady as we can to go through every fine detail to try just to make sure that we are on the side of the community and the charity, and that we learn the lessons of mistakes in the past.
Fair point. Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, then there is a recommendation, and that recommendation is approve the undertaking of a marketing exercise as detailed in the report. Are we all in agreement? But that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Item 10, which was the lease of the cricket ground, the Pavilion, Graves Park. As discussed earlier, that has been deferred. Just for the record, that report will be coming back to the next meeting of this subcommittee, which is the 9th of September 2024. Okay, thank you. Which leads us on to our final item, which is the Charity Trustee's response to the Charity Commission correspondence. Is that you, Ruth?
Yeah, I'm going to speak to that one if that's okay, and apologies I spoke earlier without saying who I was. I'm Ruth Bell, Head of Parks and Countryside.
So did I. I'm Lisa Firth, Director of Parks, Leisure and Library. Sorry.
So this is one of the items that had a couple of closed appendices. So there are elements of the reports that are discussed through this item that were closed when they originally came to committee, and they remain closed today. So just to say, if you want to discuss those items in detail, we'll need to move to closed session, although I can't imagine that would be necessary, but obviously please do shout out if you want to do that. I don't propose to read the whole report, but I'll summarise the item if that's okay. So on the 27th of June this year, a letter was received from the Charity Commission. The letter addressed a number of issues that can be broken down roughly as follows. Proposed disposal of the tennis courts within Graves Park. That section of the letter included a number of requests for information regarding decisions taken by the trustee about the disposal of the tennis courts, such as reports, decision records and minutes. Norton Nurseries, I'll discuss this one later in a bit more detail, but it included requests for information about the Norton Nurseries operational land, and it also very importantly included the fact that the Charity Commission has informed us that the trustee has been acting in breach of the 2009 scheme and the Charities Act 2011 in its ongoing use of Norton Nurseries for non-charity use. And then a small further information section which related to requests for information around the decision to begin using the glass houses within Norton Nurseries for food growing. So the letter from the Charity Commission is included as an appendix to the report, and there's also a proposed draft response from the trustee back to the Charity Commission at Appendix B. That proposed response includes a number of appendices which I referred to earlier, providing all of the information that's requested. And then further to the point that the Charity Commission have set out that the trustee has been acting unlawfully in its ongoing use of Norton Nurseries, the response also sets out a recognition of the need to regularise the situation in order to rectify that. The response sets out that a valuation of the land will be undertaken in order to allow a fee to be paid for the use of the land. That would be whilst options for the use of the land and for alternatives to Norton Nurseries are considered. it is important that a fee is paid so that the charity can begin to benefit from that use of Norton nurseries formally. Obviously, the form that looking at options for continuing to use the land or not have yet to be determined, but I appreciate that that might end up being an outcome of the discussion here. Just to refer back to the report briefly, the recommendations of that report are that the Charity Trustee Subcommittee are recommended to note the contents of the report, approve the draft letter annexed to the report, and note that officers will send a letter by email in the form approved by the subcommittee to the Charity Commission within 3 working days of the decision. And I would just add there that the original letter asked for a response by last Friday, the 12th of July, and we have sought and been given an extension to that request that they expect to see a response by this Friday. So at this point, I'd open the discussion up for any questions or amendments that you might wish to make to that draft response back.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you for preparing the response, and I appreciate there's a lot of work had to go into it. There were a lot of points raised by the Charity Commission, and I do think the response does respond to all of them. I think looking at it, there's the 3 broad issues within there, and I think I appreciate that there's only myself and Richard that were on this committee last year, so other members of the committee haven't been part of some of the discussions around these, but I feel satisfied with the responses around the tennis courts and around the glass houses, that those issues were properly considered by this committee, and agree with the responses that you've sent in respect of those issues. Where I do think we have more to do is around the wider issue around Northern Nurseries and the request of Friends of Graves Park for that land to be returned to parkland. And I feel that some of the responses in that section are a little blunt, to be honest, and seem at least to cut off the possibility of looking at that issue more widely. So I have, and I know I've shared this with with the chair beforehand, suggested a form of words which I'm open to being changed somewhat to make sure that they are legal, etc., to open up a bit more possibility for discussion around that. So what I'm proposing is that at point 10 in the letter, that we add a few words to say that the council trustee has considered the request from the Friends of the Graves group, but up to now, because I think I'm proposing something different now, has taken the view that land is in use operationally. And then at point 16, whilst the Northern Nurseries land is used operationally to service both Graves Park and other nearby green spaces, alternative use of the land is impractical. However, what I'm hoping this committee will agree to do is to request the council bring a report exploring alternative sites for the depot and for the operational plant and equipment, and that we look at sites that is not restricted to existing parks land. I think we have a whole community buildings review going on that might open up other possibilities, and that will allow proper consideration by this committee of the Friends of Graves Park request, which I don't think we have really considered as a committee up to now. And my suggestion is that any licence changes that we need to make in order to not breach the law at the moment will be temporary, basically, until we have been able to properly consider that report. And I believe there's a suggestion that we bring that report by the November committee this year.
Does anybody else have any comments? Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Fran. I know that we discussed this a bit yesterday, and I think that is something that many committee members feel quite strongly about. Would it be, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at visualising the amendments. Would this include some sort of time limit to the licence use then? Because I think that we not only need to make decisions now as people sat around the table, but we also need to think about who could be sat around the table in the future. And it needs to be a cast iron sort of guarantee that this does have the park's interests at heart.
In my view, and again, I'd take the legal advice on this, I think by bringing a report in November, we'd then be able to take a further decision about extending any licence arrangements or whatever is needed to support any decision that we took in November. But I'm looking at Robert somewhat there for potential legal advice on that.
Yeah, so I think the immediate, obviously today you received a draft of a letter to respond. It's clearly incumbent on trustees to show to the Charity Commission that these issues are taken very seriously, that immediate steps are being taken to respond, and clearly makes absolutely every sense to take that first step, but then to look in much more detail about the range of opportunities and options, because that's where your priorities are there. They are the best interests of the charitable trust. So you'll want further information, but it seems to be an entirely reasonable and appropriate, prudent step to look at a response, satisfy yourselves as trustee, acting for the trustee that in the stead of the trustee, to respond to the Charity Commission, but also to request that further work comes back.
Sorry, could you just clarify on the licence, because I think we understand from the letter that currently the licence is via custom and practice, but that's something we need to regularise basically, in order not to be in breach of the law while that work is going on preparing a report.
Thanks, yes. So specifically on the licence, the letter describes the recognition by the trustee that there's an occupation there by a third party, which is the council, and it's saying that there's a licence in place. So that's a legal relationship, it's a contractual relationship, and it should be at value. So the letter also refers to a process of valuation. There'll need to be an accounting for that, so that monies will need to come to the trustee, but it's essentially saying that it's recognising that the council and the charity are not exactly the same thing. There is separation. Therefore, there needs to be a recognition of an implied licence. So that will then, that's being declared as a recognised thing. There'll be an evaluation of the appropriate sums due to the trust in respect of the use. That can go on and be resolved and be accounted for alongside the activity to look at all options for the use of the land from the trustee's perspective. And then options will come back to the trustee to make decisions on that.
Sorry, Chair, if I may. I suppose my only worry would be that if, I'm speaking very hypothetical here, but if at tomorrow's full council meeting there was suddenly a change of all committees and we weren't the ones sat here, and the next charity subcommittee just decided to not bring a report back in November, I just feel that there's like a potential weakness there in terms of being the trustee of the charity.
Yeah, it's clearly very important. I think officers are seized of this issue, and the officers have a duty, given that they are a number of hats on, but specifically advising the trust, that whoever is sitting in this room acting for the trustee needs to be supported with options. So it's recognised that this is an intermediate step. It's not the ultimate solution of the problem or the range of options. So officers are committing to and will, because they need to, frankly, meet the duties of their roles, to come back to this committee and offer up those options. And that is a matter of the record of today. Chair.
You happy with that, Curtis? Yes,
thank you. I suppose it's also will also be political pressure. If there was some mass change in the council, then political pressure would also be applied, and hopefully pressure from the Friends group as well. Yeah.
Ruth.
I think it's worth saying that if we put in the letter back to the Charity Commission that we're making that decision to come back to committee in November, that's setting out a commitment to them. I don't think that and I don't think you're proposing that we put a cast iron deadline on a when would the licence to allow Sheffield City Council to use Norton Nurseries. I don't think you're suggesting that we put a cast iron date on it, but I also don't think we can. But what we can do is say that as part of that piece of work that will come back in November, that part of that will set out the various options, and we don't know what those options are. That's why I don't think a cast iron deadline can be put on it. But one of the requirements of that piece of work can be a recommendation that in addition to making a decision about the use of the land and or the land in whatever form that might take, but also that licence be reviewed at that point, and at that point a decision can perhaps be made that is slightly more cast iron, because the decision that you take could require use for a further 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, depending on the options that are put to you and the decisions that you take as trustee. Have I said that clearly?
So if we could bring, along with that report in November, if we could include some estimated timelines as well.
Yeah.
So, because there might be things that we could do in the short term, but not fully resolve the situation, but we might be able to do it in stages or phases. And if we can bring some outline of those timelines to include in that report, then we could have those discussions about the future licence in November.
I think that would be a good idea. I think also just constructing what this report is meant to be doing, if we could have some form of discussion about that, not today, with members of this committee, so that the report we get is the one we're expecting, not the one that you think we wanted. Thank you. Just as a point of clarification, are you saying that we can stay in this kind of status of not implied licence?
I don't believe we can,
no.
and
Right.
sorry, I'm looking at Robert again, but I do believe that we need to regularise the licence, and but a licence can be terminated pretty quickly as well, and it's not the same as a disposal, so it's not disposal of the land, it's a licence to occupy, which is very different to the disposal.
Yeah, that's right. So, the council, as the occupant, is recognising that they're there on a licence. The letter notes that there needs to be a valuation of the charge for that. That will come back, and will no doubt be appropriately retrospective. And the trustee is overseeing the situation to say, we're seeing that this is happening. There's a licence in place, and we're going to bring, and that will put things in order immediately. But we'll come back to have a more comprehensive set of options and a solution that we're satisfied as trustees for.
Okay. Prior to getting a formal agreement on that, in practical terms, how do we get a set of words into that letter, draft letter, approved? Is that something that myself, Christine and Fran could do as spokesman, chair and vice chair?
So we don't delegate, as chair, we're unable to delegate those tasks specifically to members, but the usual way that we do it is that we request that the officer revises in line with today's discussion and shares with, consults with, such as you mentioned, which may be the members that you've just mentioned.
Yes, I think that's what I meant. Yeah. Is the other two members, are you happy with that? Because we've got to get this email across pretty promptly.
I won't be here, Chair.
Emails work all over the place, Mike, you know.
Not taking my laptop.
Okay. On that basis then, noting the comments about amending the draft letter, we are recommended to note to the contents of the report, approve the draft letter with the amendments annexed to this report, note that officers will send a letter by email in the form approved by the subcommittee to the Charity Commission within 3 working days of the decision, i.e. by Friday. All in favour? Great, that's approved. Oh, sorry, Fran.
In favour of that, but I think Councillor Gilligan raised earlier there potentially any other parks that we could be in the same situation? We discussed Hillsborough Park, Firth Park potentially, where we are holding plant equipment, etc. on behalf of more groups, and is that something that we need to look at in the future as well?
Would you like a further report to come back in November that sets out the situation in other charitable parks? It may, I'm not proposing the same sort of report with all of the options, but a report setting out the situation so that then perhaps you can task us to go away and work out the options if they are needed in other parks. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Thank you. Okay, in that case, that was approved unanimously. And that, I believe, concludes the business of this subcommittee today. Thank you for your time and enjoy the summer. Thank you.